You think it's going to pay off one day, but what if you just stop thinking that and only focus on the stuff that was profitable? You wouldn't be feeling like you're failing. So I texted Tyler yesterday and I said, hey, I think we need a pause on recording this week, which may or may not have been the first time I've done that. And I said, I want to hop on a call and I just want to chat. And I want to chat about what we're doing with the podcast. We've been doing this over 8 years. We have been showing up on a weekly basis for the majority of those 8 years. And frankly, I feel like some of this has gotten stale. And, you know, Tyler and I have not been really in tune with numbers. We never really pay attention to how many of you guys listen. It's not something that we pay a lot of attention to because we just want to show up and do our thing. But we did get a little sneak peek into what our listenership has been over the last couple of years, and it kind of brought up a question as to, are we doing this the right way? And I don't mean the right way by a metric standpoint. I mean the right way by our standpoint. You know, we set out to do this to build a community and selfishly have conversations that would benefit us. You know, come to the microphone, super curious about our guest, super curious about a topic, list of questions that we wanted to dig into, you know, begging people to be on the podcast just so I could get the secret sauce of what they were doing and whether that was for business or life. And frankly, I think we've drifted from that, you know, a bit. So we hopped on a call today. I did hit the record button just in case it turned into a podcast, and lucky for you, it did. So this is that conversation. Guys, before we get into it, obviously a thank you to our sponsors, Build a Trend. Here's a builder I think that you will relate to, DMJ Restorations, a custom home builder and remodeler that is saving 5 hours a week on financial management alone using Build a Trend. That's invoicing, budgeting, getting paid. It's all done faster, easier, and with a lot less back and forth. Now, Build a Trend just dropped some major upgrades to their payment platform. So we're talking cash flow without the headaches, automating invoicing, real-time tracking, and easy, secure payments all in one place. Forget logging into 5 different tools or even chasing down unpaid invoices. The better way to get paid is here, and it actually works the way that you do. So check out DMJ's full story at buildatrend.com/MCDMJ to learn how you too can save your team hours every week.
This podcast is brought to you by Anderson. Is California the only place for big doors and indoor-outdoor living? Absolutely not. And Anderson is making it easier than ever to achieve this kind of lifestyle anywhere, including rough climates like ours. I take offense to that. Actually, our climate is pretty rough. I feel like we've had nothing but humidity for the past 6 weeks. But specifically, Anderson has a massive sliding glass wall that they call a multi-glide door, which is a great way to capitalize on the indoor-outdoor market. So just how big is this multi-glide door? Well, it can be sized for openings up to 50 feet wide and 10 feet tall. Not only that, but it can be straight stacking or pocketing with flush or on-floor drainage sills that are made of heavy-duty extruded aluminum, providing strength, rigidity, and weather protection in tough climates. And with Anderson's proven track record, support, and training, installing this glass wall is easier than you might think. For more information, head over to andersonwindows.com/Modern Craftsman.
Workwear hasn't kept up with the times until now. Harnish Workwear is bringing high-performance design and innovation to the job site with gear that is built to move, breathe, and last. No more bulk, no gimmicks, just sharp, functional apparel made for the top-tier performers who expect excellence and have a devotion to mastering their craft. I've been wearing their hoodies, their pants, and their tees, and every detail feels intentional. Smart pocket placement, stretch where it matters, and fabric that performs in any weather. Check out Harnish Workwear at harnishworkwear.com and be part of a limitless growth and elevated purpose. What do you want to talk about?
I don't really know, to be honest.
I know.
I didn't really prepare anything.
Same. I feel like I don't know. My gut keeps saying we need to hit pause for a minute and just really think about what we're doing and how we're gonna continue to thrive in this.
Yeah.
Like similar to what we talk about on social, like not just being constantly selling and just be like super high value. And I spent some time just listening to other podcasts that I really like and what I appreciate out of them. And it's all topic and who the guest is. And that's
Yeah.
it. Like it's either the guest and you're interested, or the topic is interesting. Otherwise, like you just don't listen.
Yeah. I try to think of I listen to a lot of like lifestyle podcasts, some sports podcasts, but it I can't. I think that with like all of the podcasts that are out there today, like I don't listen to every episode. There's not a podcast that like I think that we have, albeit like a small following from a podcast perspective. Like we have a pretty loyal following of people that do listen to every podcast, but I think
Yeah.
that I think that unless you're somebody with a million, 2 million followers, that not everyone's going to listen to every podcast. And I think that a
Right.
lot of that has been kind of seated in the fact that there's just so many podcasts now. There's a lot, there's market saturation and there's so many options. And I think within our world, there's only so many guests and prominent guests that people are going to see. Hey, I know that name. I'm willing to listen to that.
Yeah.
I think of other like lifestyle podcasts that I listen to where the people have the ability and like the clout to bring in these really big guests. And a lot of times those guests are just kind of doing like almost a book tour where they're going and they're promoting what they're doing on a bunch of different podcasts. But within our industry, it's like, if they've been on our podcast, they've been on Brad's podcast, they've been on Mark's podcast, they've been on the Levelheads podcast. Like it's a lot of redundancy.
Yeah. And like there's nothing wrong with that in the sense of like those particular guests. But I think to your point, it's how many times you're going to listen to the same person get interviewed by different people.
Yeah.
Like unless you're a diehard fan, or like it's Tom Silva. Like I want to hear what the other guys have to ask, and then hear what Nick and Tyler have to ask. Otherwise, it becomes the same story over and over.
And I think that would be fine. I think that I think when you look bigger picture and you look bigger, more like volume based, or I guess anything that's more lifestyle related and not so specific to a certain industry, that like the potential for guests is far more robust. And I think that you also, when you get to that point, like you have a whole team behind you that can bring in guests that have the experience being on a podcast, telling their story. They're not looking to sell something. There's not like a marketing objective behind the conversation that they're having. And I also think that with those guests, you're opening yourself up to a whole new listenership, just because more people are going to be aware of them. Like if you, I guess I'd be curious, if somebody stumbled upon our podcast that wasn't within the building industry, like they just wouldn't listen to it. There's no.
Yeah. Like what's the reason? Like, why am I listening?
Yeah.
And that's what in our text the other day, excuse me, I came across this podcast called The Open Residency. And there's so much, there's so much I love about it. Like the production I've shared, they basically have this warehouse with a table in the middle, and the room's got to be 50 by 50, and there's this tiny 2-person table in the middle, and it's just dope. Like the filming's dope, the content they build around it's dope, but the conversations are really cool. And so I watched one the other day because like I was listening to them, and I'm like, I want to watch this guy interview. And it was he just sat down and he, obviously had structured questions and kind of had, a show like arc, right? Like what he wanted to get into. And it was very much about the guest and just genuine interest. Sidebar, like that's something I've thought about too, is our our podcast has always been really focused. We say it's focused on craftsmanship, but it's very much focused on craftsmanship and business of home building and remodeling. And both you and I have, you know, interest outside of that. And that doesn't mean we need to have like, a guy that races dirt bikes on, like because you like dirt bikes, but it could be someone that has created a successful team or a successful business around that. Where I think the business side, I think business in general is just a conversation that people like understanding and how someone's done it successfully. All that to be said, in the latest episode of that open residency podcast, he talked about it a few times, how he is basically leveraging each and every guest that he has on to get to the next guest.
Yeah.
And I found that I've never considered that. Like, it's never been something I've thought, like, it's always been the end goal with a guest is to get them on the show. And then we go back and we basically go back to the beginning of the game board and say, all right, now who's next? Rather than saying, hey, Brad, we want you on the podcast. We have him on the podcast. By the way, we'd love to know, like, do you have a connection to this person or this person, and continue to build up.
Yeah. I guess like there's a few things that we have to consider. And I think this is like, one is this, when I look at highly successful podcasts, at least ones that I'm aware of that I listen to, and I'm sure that like I'm going to put a blanket statement on this, and I understand that there are outliers. Most people, it is their only job. Like who have or they had a successful career doing something else, right? They were movie stars, they were musicians, they had another career that provided them with income, and this is almost like a second wind where they're not necessarily relying on it for their main source of income, or that's not how they made money their whole life. That it's a passion project where they already were successful in life, but they have the ability to tap into a network that allows them growth above and beyond, I feel, what you and I are capable of. Because when you think big picture, right, it's like, all right, so we have a few 100,000 Instagram followers. Big picture, that's nothing. Like, we're talking about people who have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people who follow their story and follow their journey, and a network that they can tap into. So I think that we just have to be cognizant of who are we speaking to. Like, at the end of the day, regardless of the guests we have, regardless of the conversation that we have, are we just speaking to a loyal bunch of followers? Are we looking to attract new followers? What are we trying to sell? Is this to prove value to our partners, our sponsors, to our listeners, to ourselves? Is it just a passion project? But I think that you have to consider all of that when you're deciding what direction you want to go, because it's not how we like make a living.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, where I think it's important, where it's like, I never, the idea that we're only speaking to this loyal group of people, it's what we're kind of ruminating on is, how do we get to more people? And it's almost as though like that could be taken as like, we already have our following, like we're not talking about them, we care about getting more people, rather than just providing great value to the people that are already here. And that's not what the conversation is about. Obviously the intent is to provide great value, but continue to grow that audience by in the way of providing value.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it might be a vanity metric. I'm sure that there's value from a sponsorship perspective, but I also Like I think that we need to consider like what that profile, what that market looks like, who is essentially our client for the podcast, and what does that look like from a sustainability perspective. Like if you look at the numbers, they remain pretty consistent. We have spikes and surges, but like they're pretty consistent, and that tells me that we have people who are showing up week in and week out and listening to the podcast, and those are the people who invest in what we're doing, who believe in what we're doing, who correspond with us, who support our sponsors. And like with the saturation of the market, is there an opportunity to grow outside of that? Why do we do that? Do we need to do that? Like what's the whole purpose behind that? Because at the end of the day, I kind of look at it this way, where it's like we have to show up every week. We have to put the work in. Obviously, I want to get compensated for that time. Like it's been 10 years. I don't want to just continue to set more and more time aside for this for free. So like we need to monetize that in some way, shape, or form, if not multiple, because it's just consuming more and more time. But like selfishly, I wanna get on here and have conversations with people and get to better guests. And that's not a dig at the guests we've had, but just more interesting people who have more storied careers, and can provide a lot of unique insight that anybody who's listening, but also ourselves as part of that conversation, can just be very intrigued, very engaged, and very entertained, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to have on guests that I'm like, holy crap, this is so interesting. I've never thought of it that way. That's a really like valuable, interesting perspective, and just learning a story from them. And I think that that's something that keeps me going. Yeah, I want to get paid for it. Yeah, I need the time that we're spending and the investment financially. We need to recoup that cost and make money on it at this point. Now, I'm going to be 40 years old next year. I can't just like lock myself in a room a day a week and be like, sorry, Rach, girls, this is just because I love doing it.
Right.
But like, I do want to love doing it too.
Right.
So like, I think really interesting dynamic guest. Like that's why I listen to other podcasts, because of those conversations.
That's kind of what I'm getting at is, I do think it's almost, at least for me, I feel as though we're responsible to continue to have people within our industry and talk about our industry. But there's few podcasts that do that. And I think that the ones that are very successful are ones that pull from everywhere, because I don't listen to a single podcast in our industry. And when my number one focus in my professional life and in terms of like what I'm passionate about is building. But I don't consume any of that podcast building content. It's all about the business side of it. And I think that we talk about more interesting perspectives or more interesting guests or even just topics. Maybe we do explore outside of that and bring on people that have different perspectives, because it goes back to my favorite book that I've talked about 100 times, Unreasonable Hospitality, is about the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry. But when you get to the end of that book, it talks about how this can be applied to any industry. And it's like, get Will Gradera on the podcast and talk about hospitality and, from a business perspective.
It is true. And I think that, we are so immersed in this industry from like, we do it for a living. The podcast, the summit that we put together, all the companies that we work with, all the companies that we partner with, that it's like, it would at times be refreshing. It's like, even when we go to these events and it's just more, communication with more of the same people. And it's like, this is everything in our lives. These are the people we speak with, the people that we break bread with. These are the people that we're in business with. These are the people that we rely on for information or for guidance, for mentorship. And it's like, would that bring value to us and our listeners to have conversations that with people that we look up to, or that we find interesting, that really have nothing to do with the construction industry? And I think that it's always going to be tied back to that, because so much of what we do is just fully enveloped in that. But like, would that make for more valuable, more engaging conversations where we're having people on that just like aren't engaged with the construction industry? um like, what does that do for our listeners? Is that something that selfishly we're just looking to do for ourselves, because we do have people showing up each and every week to hear what we have to say? Like, I just had somebody message me about like, hey, I really appreciate the subcontractor conversation that you guys have. Like, all of the successful relationships that I've had with subs have had me sign agreements and have been like legitimate with them. And those
I
have
guess
been like the best relationships that I've had.
I guess my argument here, like I love, like obviously love hearing that these episodes are appreciated, successful, like people like those conversations. But I mean, that's one person, or maybe it's a couple people. And not that I don't want to provide value to that particular person, but I think the argument, I think my argument here is, rather than trying to answer what they want to hear, we just hop on here and talk about what we want to talk about with
Yeah.
the people that we want to talk about it with. Because if we're genuinely interested in a conversation, which may or may not have anything to do with our industry, that's going to be the most engaging, at least for us individually.
Yeah. I think also it's just like guests that understand how to have those conversations as well, right? Where it's not just banter, it's not just small talk. And I think that that's the challenge with having guests where they haven't done this much, or you don't have the rapport with them beforehand, where you have an hour and a half, 2 hours to sit down and record and try and pull out as much of that conversation that's high impact and actually worthy of putting on the air. I think sometimes is difficult, right? Where if you have guests that have more experience with having that like distilled conversation about their unique perspective or about their life or about their experience, I think that it might be easier to just have a more engaging, entertaining conversation where it's not just like, hey, we're at a networking event and we're just kind of shooting the shit with each other and it's all surface level and it's all the same questions, where it's like, no. And I think that this was a lot of the intent with the questionnaire that we sent out, where, so for a little bit of background, if we end up dumping this podcast out there, like, I guess, I don't know, 6, 8, 9 months ago, we were at this same point again, where it's like, how do we create really engaging conversations with people where we can get them on, we can screen them, we can vet them, we can get them on, and we can at least have we've got their wheels spinning as to some really great conversations that we can have. So we generated this form that we could have people fill out, that really, like, the goal for the form for me was to just have them dig really deeply into their life, into their experience, into their world, and start asking themselves and like inventorying either knowledge or experience that they have that nobody else has. Because to me, that's really, and whether it's something that it can apply to me, or 100% wholeheartedly, or it's something that I can just pull 1% of, to me, where it's like, you're providing me with an insight and a perspective, information and knowledge that I just like, that's not my life. That's not my experience. I love hearing your take on this. And I want to integrate some of that into my life and my business. Like that was the goal for these questionnaires. And I think that it really did. People started to really dig deeply and fill these out. And we had like really great responses. But then we'd get them on the podcast and it would be like the same marketing trying to push and say all the right things, where it's like, oh my God, we had this really amazing questionnaire and form that you filled out where it's like, this is all such amazing insight and life perspective and business perspective and just things that I don't think about because I haven't walked the same path as you. And then we get them on, and then it's like, no, this is what I do. This is my process. We have these employees. We want to grow. We want to scale. And it's like, there's got to be more to it than just that. So I think it's being able to be good hosts as well and really drive that conversation and steer that conversation into a more deeply engaging conversation where we are digging into more than just surface level or more than just saying all the right things or the buzzwords. I think that would be very, very intriguing to me to be able to approach these conversations in that way, where it's like, hey, we don't want you to come on here with any sort of program marketing agenda, really, even like that we know that you own a business or who you are. Like, I just want to hear some really amazing insight that you have to life,
Yeah.
that you might be able to share with people that you feel other people have not experienced.
Yeah, because that's the value, and I think that's the crux of what we've always tried to do with this is build the community, build the, tie this all back to the nuances that we deal with on a day to day, and how we all deal with it differently.
I mean,
The
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was like, the questionnaire is amazing, and we've gotten some crazy, like, amazing answers. But it's funny how the response is different when someone sits down to write it out versus, hey, let's talk about that. And I almost think like it's almost as though we just keep those, you know, on our side and then ask them live because they've already went through this whole like thought process of like writing it down and thinking about that. And then when you ask someone to say it again, anytime someone repeats, what they said, it's always like the shorter version.
I just think about, even a lot of times on those questionnaires where we're asking like, what's the most difficult thing that you dealt with in life or business, and how did you like bridge that experience or move forward, or did you not? And I think that like there's been many times that people have discussed death of somebody in their family or death of their parents or death of a family member. And then you go to have that conversation and they like fully clam up. And not that that's what like that needs to be the basis for our conversation, but like recently experiencing this and like the impact on your life and your family and your business and what you prioritize, and like how I view life moving forward, and how I view my family, my children's, my wife, my mother-in-law's experience of all of this. Like I feel like I have a different perspective of life prior to experiencing this at this stage in my life, and I've experienced it before. I was probably less mature. Like I feel like it's the first time that I've experienced death where it's not just how did this affect me, and like it has changed my mindset, my mentality for business, for being around my children, my wife, like how I treat my mother-in-law. And like these to me are the conversations that really provide a ton of insight. And maybe it's not business related, but like there's certain things that I'm looking to do with business and the way that I approach business and dealing with customers and helping customers, and like where I market myself, where I'm like, is there a way just to treat people better? Is there a way like to have more compassion for what people are going through in life and in business? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, life doesn't have to be such a transactional experience as you navigate it. And I think that like those are the type of conversations that I want to have with people, right? Where even your journey into the trades or how you ended up here, like for me and how I got here, and I worked for my dad's business for a while, and like everyone makes a joke, well, you can't work for family, but why? Like, have I ever really dug into why and what my relationship looked like with my dad and like being at work and leaving work and legitimately feeling as though I was like hated by my family and the pit that put in my stomach and how I just like I lost my way and I was 19 and I had severe anxiety and I felt that I had lost like my true direction of north and I had to reevaluate life and my direction and my path and how scary that was and how that led to where I am today? Or are we just going to touch on the surface of, hey, you can't work for family? Like, I just feel like there's so many experiences that maybe we don't touch on 10 topics. Maybe we
Mm,
dive into like two questions just so deeply where it's
mm.
like, this is almost therapy right now. And we just keep hammering you with why. And like, well, why do you think that happened? What made you think that? How was that different than every other time you experienced something similar? Because I think when we if we can steer a conversation where people are coming to realizations live that they never really even spent the time assessing, I think that that could also just create a more dynamic conversation with people.
Every guest that we've sought out to have on this podcast is usually rooted in I want to ask them a question.
Yeah.
So like this is something I want to know, and like that's what we started this podcast about. Is like we were reaching out to people. Like even when John was on, like I had reached out to John and said, hey, I want to pick your brain. I want to know what you do. I want to know. I want to learn from you. And then it was you, and then it was the next get. Like then it was the guests, and it was always because I wanted to learn, or you, or John, like any of us wanted to learn something
Yeah.
from a particular person. And I think that is what, in reflecting the last couple weeks, or more specifically this week, on just what the podcast is, I kept coming back to that. I was like, this was always just so I could get information on building how to build my business
Yeah.
and record it and share it with everyone. And if people liked it, they liked it. If they didn't, they didn't. But that was what grew us in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I even think, from like our perspectives, do people really like, yeah, they understand what they see, but is it selfish? Is it vain of us to dig deeper into each other, or like what makes you tick, right? Like we understand a lot of the reasons and the motivations for you wanting to grow your business and what that does for you, and we understand that like there has to be a balance between your wants, your needs, your wife's wants, your wife's needs, your family's needs and wants, but like how does that truly impact your day to day? How do you lay your head to bed at night understanding that like, yeah, much of growing the business is for me and I want to support my family, but like what makes it that powerful and strong for you that there's times that you're pushing everyone else's needs aside to chase your own goals, right? Where like at the end of the day, that's so much of it. Yeah, like you want wealth, you want things, you want your family to have a nice life, but you also want these things just for you. And there's same thing with my business. There's things that I want just for me, and like there's things I want to create with my business that's free time that has nothing to do with my family and my kids. And how do I really come to terms with being okay with that? um, Instead of just saying, oh, it's work life balance, or, you have to be present when you're with your kids. Like, I think that there's so many more layers to those conversations that a lot of times people are afraid to dig into, to ask, or when a guest kind of clams up and is not willing to be vulnerable enough to have those conversations. And I've always found that older guests for us that are on the end of their career or retired are more willing to have those um, questions answer, or more likely to answer those questions in a straightforward, open, and honest manner, because they don't have anything to hide. Like, the ego is pushed aside. They understand why they did a lot of the things, and to me, those have always been the most engaging conversations, because it's not like I'm just sitting here listening to you pitch your business. And I
Mhm.
think that we've done the same thing, right? We've pitched a lot of what we've done, even from developing courses and why, and hey, this is to help you, this is to help you get paid for your time. But like, truly, why? Like, if why is that so important to us? When you dig deeply, it's more than just like, I wasn't spending time with my family, like I wasn't getting paid for it. Like, deep down, how did that fuck you up? Like, how did that fuck your family up, physically, mentally, emotionally? I think that those are the conversations that we need to ensure we're vulnerable enough to have, and our guests are willing to be vulnerable enough to be like, yo, if we ask you some really, really intense, deep shit, are you willing to dive into it and dig into it? Because I think for me, that's when a conversation's interesting, and it doesn't just feel
Yeah.
like we're at a networking event.
100%. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's in our industry. I mean, probably a handful of people at this point, but we've been texting back and forth, and it's the same. It's like, dude, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I work too fucking hard. I'm not making any money. My guys are all complaining that they don't make enough money. I'm paying them top dollar, and it's and he's just like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, I work hard and I have a good business, and I'm just this is not sustainable. And there's so many, there's like, it's rooted way deeper than just like, oh, he doesn't have his systems and processes in place, because that's not the truth.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
like diving into what that fear actually looks like and how that impacts your life.
right,
Because
and what, like,
it's not just like now. It's not just when you're sitting in your office chair. Like, that affects you literally every single day. And like,
mhm,
what are you considering when you have those thoughts? Like, how
mhm,
realistic are those thoughts? Like, what does the path forward look like? Why do you keep coming back to this? I think that those are the questions that I want. Like, when I felt like I didn't want to be in business anymore, and that it wasn't worth it, and like the struggles that you have where it's like, well, I just spent 10 years building this whole business up, and everyone sees what I present on social media, and like, it is that way from a work perspective. This is my work. This is actually how I execute. But am I giving them a true glimpse into what's going on internally with me?
mhm,
Or am I falsely promoting that, like, yeah, my customers are great. They pay me top dollar. They afford me an opportunity to do really amazing work. But like, how is that all eating me up inside? How am I struggling with that? How is it not providing me with the means and the lifestyle that I need? And how am I struggling to make this a viable, sustainable business, both financially and emotionally? Because I can look back on those times, and like, I can understand how I wasn't a good dad. I wasn't a good husband. I was like looking for outside stimulants to make me be okay in my own skin. And whether it was, hey, I want to get out of this lifestyle, I want to move, I want a different business, I want a different career path. Like, at the end of the day, a lot of that was coming just from my own internal demons and battles. And they were manifesting themselves through my work, and
mhm.
through I think that my work was probably perpetuating a lot of those feelings, because I didn't have quite the control that I thought that I did while that was happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pushback a lot of people have is that, especially in business, people have to have some sort of facade that they have their shit together. And, I think about this one friend, like, if he came on the podcast and we dug into that, you know, I think that there's a lot of fear that he would lose the confidence from people. I mean, I would.
Yeah.
There's shit I would love to talk about. And I keep joking that, there that when I finish, a particular project, that I want to tell the real story, like what it really took and
Yeah.
how we actually got to the finish line. And I think about some of the best business books I've ever read and just the relentless pursuit for, success. And I forget what book it was. I want to say, do I have it? There's one sitting on my nightstand, but
You have a
it's
nightstand in
the,
your office?
dude. I just live here. I think it's on the nightstand in my house, but I remember reading part of that book, and it talked about how he pulled his right hand man and a handful of key people into the office and was like, "We're fucked,
Yeah.
and this is where we stand, and these are the options." And I remember reading that and like how, I mean, this was like, it ended up being like $100 million company, and I forget what but either way. Um, but reading through that and realizing that his team had the opportunity to be like, "Oh shit, I'm out,"
Yeah.
but they all were like, "All right, got it. Like, let's figure this out. Let's work through this." Um,
But even like
and
even that, right, where that I think that we can all write off to, yeah, it's business, it's hard, you're going to struggle through it, you're going to make it work. Like big picture, there's this happy ending at the end of that and you get through it. But like what what happens inside the brains and the like spirit of these people when they're faced with those decisions? Like some people, right, it's going to be like they're going to run away from that. Some people are going to want to step up. But what decisions are you weighing, right? Where, when I had a turning point in my life, in my career, and it's like I'm going to go one direction or another. What Obviously there's all the tangibles, there's all the quantitative, like objective information there, but what about all the things that people don't discuss and the considerations that you have and the financial weight of that and just like the fear of failure and what that actually feels like and what that can do to you, what that can do to your spirit, what that can do to your motivation? How do you come back from that? How do you continue to wake up every day and like show face in front of your company, in front of your family, in front of your friends, and just keep a happy face and keep trucking through it? Like we always just chalk, like you just got to work more. It's everything's gonna be hard, but like there's got to be more to it than just saying, yeah, it's gonna be hard.
yeah, I think that's the immediate reaction. And I mean, that's, I actually was pulling up our text and I said that. I'm like, this isn't supposed to be easy. And
Yeah,
people talk about that and it's hard. And everyone says it's like when it's hard, you push through because this is when most people stop. And it's not some like, I'm sure it's meant to be motivational in a lot of ways, but that is the reality because like when shit is hard, the typical reaction to that is let's make it less hard. And there's only, you know, some percentage of people that are willing to endure how hard it is to continue to push through and get on the other side because they see it as an opportunity because everyone else is turning around and saying, hey, this is too hard. And especially in business. And and one of the other things I was saying is the interesting thing, and you and Tyler, you said this a couple episodes ago, is like if you were to hire a consultant or you were selling your business and they were looking at your business, they would probably shed most of the weight because they would look at it and be like, that's not profitable. Why the fuck are you doing it?
yeah,
And the reason you're doing it and the reason that we all do it is because we romanticize it. We think we either like that part of the business or we think that there's ROI on that part of the business when the reality is like the numbers are screaming at you saying that's killing you. And you think it's going to pay off one day, but what if you just stop thinking that and only focus on the stuff that was profitable? You wouldn't be feeling like you're failing
yeah.
right now.
I think that there's more to it than just it. I mean, it's like a marriage that isn't working, right? Where it's like sometimes it'd be better just to cut the cord, but there's a lot more to it than just saying everyone would be better off in the situation if it weren't this way anymore. There's
Hmm.
just there's so much more to it, and it's not always just ego. It's not always just that we spent this much time. Like, there's reasons for that, and a lot of times those reasons can be so deep. Like, it might be that, hey, I started my business with my dad, and my dad passed away 2 years ago, and this was like something that he always enjoyed doing and like was adamant on being a part of our business. And so like there's an emotional aspect to that that no amount of money can justify or quantify the reasons why you're doing that. And you're doing that almost in like a stewardship of somebody's honor. Um, I just think that in life and in business, we're also, excuse me, we're always trying to gauge where we stand and make decisions based on just purely the analytics and the data behind what works. But I think that we often aren't running our businesses that way. Like, if we had built our businesses just around the numbers, and then it's like, yeah, now we can manage our business just around the numbers. But most of us have built our businesses on the emotions behind the
Right.
business. And then we're trying to be like, oh, well, in order to be successful, this has to be transactional. This has to be a data driven decision. And like, that was never how we didn't grow our business just based on data. It was based on a lot of emotional decisions, and that's how we manage projects. And you can't just all of a sudden implement that or integrate that into your business and say, this is the way that we need to do it. There's so much more to every decision that we make on any given day, like whether we walk away from a job, whether we take a job, whether we hire somebody, whether we fire somebody. Dude, like, how hard is it to
Right.
fire somebody? And like, what did your 3 days, week leading up to firing that person who had no idea that it was coming? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not just firing somebody where like, this person sucks, I can't wait to unload them, they're dead weight. But what about the person that you have to let go because there's just no room for them anymore? Like,
Hmm.
what is that? How does that weigh on you emotionally? Like, what things did you have to consider? Did you keep them on for longer than you wanted to because they had a family or they just had a kid and you knew that they didn't have somewhere to go? Like, how much did that impact your business financially by keeping somebody on payroll because you felt for them? And I think that, like, if we can relate conversations to that, I think that, yeah, people are looking for advice financially and like from more numbers and data driven metrics. Everyone wants to know those things and everyone needs to know those things. But I think a lot of people are looking for insight on how to get through life and business from an emotional perspective, and how to make the decisions that you need to have a successful business.
Hmm.
Obviously from a numbers perspective, but also like, how do I stay sane throughout all of this?
Right.
Because it's
Yeah,
really it's
how are you
really really
making,
really hard.
yeah, and how, like, what happened, how do you handle those situations that come up
Yeah, like,
when you get when you get bad, that like, bad information or bad feedback? It's like, or something that is detrimental to the business, or you're running out of cash, you lost a big job, your best employee quits. It's like, in that moment, the emotion, you know is rushing.
yeah,
And it's like, how do you get through, like, how do oh yeah, you think about the bigger picture, sure, like, you can summarize it like that, but in the actual moment, what truly goes through your mind, and how do you actually deal with it?
it's funny you texted me. So we were supposed to record this, for anyone listening, we were supposed to record this podcast 2 days ago. You had something come up for work, so we bumped it, like, tentatively, didn't when we were going to do it. We scheduled a time today. Rachel just went back to work because her dad passed away and she took the week off. Monday was Tilly's birthday, which is also her dad's birthday. So it's been like, she's an only child. She's been trying to manage stuff with her mom. her own life. She just went back to work. I've been trying to get the girls to camp because they started camp right at 2 days after Rob died. Good and bad. But since starting camp, Tilly has had, she comes home at night and she has a fever, and it's been over a week now. And we just kind of attribute it to like Rob passing away, her being emotionally exhausted, starting camp. They're outside every day. She's tired. She's just run down. And then it's been a week. She hasn't gotten better. So then her throat started hurting. So I was like, I've been taking them to camp in the morning. Rachel was like, I'll take Selby and her friend to camp if you can take Tilly to the doctor. So we're at the doctor, and the doctor, it's like the second appointment of the day. The doctor's 45 minutes late to see us. And I'm just sitting there like stressing it out. We're supposed to go record this podcast. And then Tilly's like anxious being at the doctor, and I'm getting like really stressed out. And I was like, I got to be home by 10:30. I'm supposed to drive her to camp after this. The doctor's still not here. And I'm like thinking in my head that I'm about to just like flip out on this doctor when she walks in, being like, it's the second appointment of the day and you're already 45 minutes late. And so she's asking about Tilly and why she's feeling. And it's like, I do think a part of this is emotional, and like she's run down and she's 9 and she doesn't know how to deal with all of this and cope with all of this. But obviously, like there's probably medical things going on as well. So getting her all the blood work and everything else needs. And then you texted me like I was so stressed out about getting home on time, and I like get home and I'm ready to get set up, and then you're like, yo, it's going to be closer to like 11:30, and I'm like, damn, I wish I would have gotten, or like, why couldn't I just text you and be like, yo, I'm going to be an hour late, just so I don't feel like I have my stomach in my throat. But like,
because I mean the same reason like I was freaking out when I texted you.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I hate kicking the can down the road. I hate constant rescheduling. And it's funny, you give me like just the thumbs up. I'm like, he's pissed.
No, I actually was like quite relieved. I was just there was just a million things going on.
You know? I know. It's
like I get
it's in our head. Like that's just.
And then Rachel's mom's here because she went. It's just, dude, it's so fucked up right now. And like this is what I'm talking about. Like Rachel's mom was here this morning because she didn't drive a lot. So she's getting out, she's driving. She had to go to the DMV because her husband just died. So now she needs to get him off the title of the car. And she goes to the DMV, and the DMV is like, no, you need to go do this. So she came here because she was upset because it's around the corner from her house. So Rachel's like consoling her mom. Tilly now needs to get blood work. They think she has mono. The doctor was like, her eyes seem puffy to you. And I'm like, yeah, but she's also been crying for the last week. So like, I don't know if she's sick or what's going on. And like, and then you go and you try and meet with a customer and have a normal conversation with a subcontractor, or just like wake up in the morning while all of this shit is going on, or record a podcast, or like I'm stressed because I'm going to be late to the podcast and I know that your schedule's tight. And like, this is the stuff that I think everyone goes through at one time or another, or is constantly going through, that we don't talk about. And then you have every other aspect of life, be it sports, personal life, financial struggles, like projects that you have going on, your marriage, dating, if you're doing that, like business, all on top of that. And it's like, yeah, no wonder why every single one of us is ready to have like an anxiety or panic attack every moment of every day, because we go through all this shit and it's just nonstop. And there's no respite, and we like, nobody actually talks about this stuff to anyone. It's just like, well, it's supposed to be hard. My morning this morning, it's supposed to be hard. Most people would have just quit and said, I can't go on the podcast. But like, what value are we having by creating content by saying it's supposed to be hard, just keep showing up? Like, it is, but like, is it, or is there more to it than that? Like, let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah, it's more just like it's a Band-Aid. It's like, it's supposed to be hard. Oh, okay, I'm good now.
Yeah, it's like, I just keep going.
But how much further do I have to go?
Correct.
Like, how much more pain do I need to endure?
Or are you just like, exacerbating the issue?
Right. Like, exactly. Like, is this going to pay off, or is it really not? Like, that's the...
Is saying it's hard the answer, or is that just going to lead to you banging your head against the wall for longer and longer and longer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if somebody just told you, like, it's hard, but it doesn't need to be this hard. You're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that a better answer?
Right.
And I think that oftentimes we pull shit out of context to see it and hear it the way that we need to.
Yeah.
Right. Where, like, if that same person said it needs to be hard, if you really unpacked all of that and laid it out in front of them, they might be like, yo, it needs to be hard, but it doesn't need to be this hard. Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. Um, and I think that there's a lot more to it than what we get on here and communicate and allude to. I think that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. I think that a lot of people experience what we're going through, what we're struggling with the day to day. I think that's probably why a lot of people are short all the time, why a lot of people are looking for quick fixes, why a lot of people rely on other things. I also think that it's a huge reason why there's like such a push for wellness and
Mm-hmm.
exercise, because like people are looking for anything to get them feeling comfortable in their own skin. And to me, that's something that I think that we could do a better job with our guests, but it takes a very special guest to be able to get on here with two people that they may or may not have met before and just open up about things in their life that are either like difficult, um, you know, disheartening, um, sad, make them angry. Like, it's really hard to have those conversations when you have 2 hours to spend with
Mm-hmm.
somebody, because I feel like it's not until you get like an hour into the conversation where they're willing to let their shoulders down and start being real with you. And sometimes it doesn't happen.
Right.
But I
Let's
would
do
like
that.
to be able to dig into guests a little. I'd like to be able to honestly like analyze my own life a little bit more, um, and like slow down to kind of really work through what I'm feeling rather than just pushing it aside. Like, if we have 2 hours every single week where we can literally just dig into each other and slow down and really gauge and analyze what we're going through right now and how we intend to get through that, and relate that to what our guests are feeling or what they've struggled with, um, and provide that insight. Everyone's walking a different walk, and I think that how we come out of this, how we show up every day, how we approach business and life is different, and we do what works for us or what doesn't work for us. Um, but to me, I think that that's some really valuable insight and perspective that we can provide for people, rather than just like, this is how I market my business. When this didn't go right and it cost me this much money, this is what I had to do to fix it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot more to it than I think we show a lot, but I think that there's a lot more that can be shown, and that we can really be vulnerable with. And I think that makes for powerful conversations, that are very engaging, not only for us, but for our listeners.
I like that. And it goes back to what I said, bringing this back to the roots of why we did this to begin with, because we wanted to ask a particular person a particular question, dig into a topic for our own selfish needs.
Yeah.
And because we know we're not the only one. Um, the other thing that came up as potentially an idea is digging into, just like some of our own past projects and
Hmm.
how they went, the real behind the scenes. Like, hey, I actually lost a lot of money on this job, and this is how I worked through it, or this is how I wrote it off, or this is how I leveraged that loss as a marketing effort. And just talking about it, because I mean, and that I also think that we can bucket these, right? Like, we don't have to do the same type of podcast episode all the time. But I thought a lot about how we see these projects unfold, and even when they're like, there's one particular one I think about all the time. It's like it was published. It talked about how much of a success it was, and it's like it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like that GC went out of business. It took them 5 years to complete, and the photos make it look 10 times better than it actually is.
Hmm.
And and being able to take some of our own past experiences, and and maybe we're not tying it right back to like, hey, it's this project on my website, and here's the client, because obviously for privacy, and you don't want your client maybe knowing some of this stuff. But I bet that there's I bet there would be some value in sharing some of those stories, and just talking about it from the very first phone call to how you punched out that job, and what was that experience like, what were the difficulties that you face, and how did you actually get that job complete.
Yeah, I think that is important. I think again, it's just being able to navigate and orchestrate these conversations in a way that we can focus for an hour
Mm-hmm.
and a half or so, and maybe it's not like, maybe it's one or two things and we just dig into them more deeply, and we don't just peel off of them when it's like it starts to get hard, right? Where that happens because you tell the guest is starting to clam up, they start to get uncomfortable, you start getting uncomfortable asking those questions. And I think that honestly that's probably when we should push a little bit further, and dive into that. And it's the same thing with, like you said, with postmortems for projects, where, hey, it appeared this way and this is actually what happened, and this is how we got through it. This is how we got through it as a team. This is how I got through it with my family. This is how everyone supported us. I think at the end of the day, most of us are really just trying to figure out how to navigate life with regard to business, family, finances, mental health, physical well-being. We're just trying to figure all of that out, and it's a lot of balls to have up in the air at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how good of a job we are at being fully, or as transparent as we can be without like hurting people who are closest to us. Um, I always prefer those conversations where you can hear how people react to those experiences, how they've gotten through them, how that's changed their perspective or how they approach business. A lot of my business decisions aren't necessarily just based on like the quantifiable aspects of business. Like there's a lot of things that I do in business because I feel like it's the right thing to do, or because it preserves my sanity, or it creates a better space for me physically and emotionally. And I think that that's important to dig into as well. I also like, I think we do have a really, really like robust, devout following of people who are committed to us and what we do. And like, I know even with everything that happened with us recently, like I had like some of our sponsors reach out, like send stuff. You obviously, I had a consulting client like send flowers to the funeral home where it was like, Rachel's like, I think these are for you. And like at the end of the day, when I think about why are we doing this, and like you said, well, maybe it's just one or two people, like maybe that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
um I think that I would personally rather have like a less is more, quality over quantity, where it's,
Yeah.
hey, we have these people who engage, these people who really, really understand what this is about. And I think that a smaller number there might be more valuable to me than a million people.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to come down to like vanity metrics and why we really are doing this and who we're really trying to help. Because the handful of people that support it, well, there's more than a handful of people in my life the past few weeks who have stepped up to the plate and supported us when we needed it, have just provided a lot of perspective in life where it's like, this is where I should be focusing on. These are the things that we should be talking about. These are the good things in life,
Mm-hmm.
that make a lot of this worth it, and directly impact ourselves as well as our business, even though it might be personal life related.
I'm gonna send out an email to all you guys listening, because I think we are gonna post this at this point. I think it would be worth sharing kind of a little bit of intel what Tyler and I have been chatting about in the background and just how we continue to show up for you guys. But I'm going to send out an email. And if you're on the newsletter, you'll get it. But do Tyler and I a favor, reply to it and let us know your thoughts, long, short, whatever. It would be interesting to hear what has been the most value, provided the most value for you. And if what we talked about today sounds like a good direction. Ultimately we want to show up and be intrigued on our own basis, but a lot of you guys have been around for the last almost decade, and it's valuable insight. So keep an eye out for an email and let us know what you think.
Yeah, I think it comes down to just growth, right? We're not the same people that we were 10 years ago. We're not the same people that we were last year. And I think it's understanding how to grow in a way that's sustainable and relatable to all of our listeners, and not just going through the motions and continuing to do things kind of the way that everyone else is doing them. And how we can do that, and how we can do that where it's not a decision just based on how can we get more listens, how can we get more eyes on this, because I think that if that's what we're trying to do, we're getting away from who we really are as a brand and why we started this. So I think that we need to shift our focal point and the lens at which we're looking at all of this to ensure that we're aimed and headed in the right direction as well.
I like it. With that being said, thank you guys. Thanks to our sponsors, Anderson, Builder Trend, as well as Harnish Workwear. And we'll see you guys next week.